AI is moving fast. So fast, it's hard to keep up. In fact, in ServiceNow's latest AI Maturity Index, scores dipped 20% from last year. But that's okay, because AI isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. You may be behind today, but tomorrow you could be a pace setter. Dive into ServiceNow's AI Maturity Index and see how you can innovate as fast as your ambitions. Visit servicenow.com/AI maturity.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustral implant, 68 milligrams radiopaque. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Joining me now, Garrett Ziegler. He is the founder and chairman of Marco Polo. That is the nonprofit research organization that has published the entirety of Hunter Biden's laptop. He served as an associate director in the White House of President Donald Trump in his first term in the Office of Trade and Manufacturing. Garrett Ziegler has a degree in economics from St. Louis University, lives in Illinois with his wife and all-American children. He is a cousin of White House Press Secretary Ron Ziegler, who was most famous for walking back one of his Watergate statements, saying that his previous statement was now inoperative, one of my all-time favorites. Garrett Ziegler, welcome back into the Stone Zone.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's a foundation in Western law that you can't be held to account for the sins of your father. Well, I wouldn't call that a sin by Ron, but definitely something that I wouldn't say. But, hey, Ron was loyal above all, and that I really admire.
He was a very good man, and the deep state removed Richard Nixon. We now know this based on declassified documents. The Central Intelligence Agency, well aware of the plan to break into the Watergate, infiltrates the Watergate burglar team with multiple CIA operatives still on the CIA payroll, still answering to their handlers. It's a setup. It's interesting because the Watergate prosecutors and the Senate Watergate Committee both knew of the CIA's active involvement, yet they were barred from publishing a minority report. They were barred from asking any questions. Anyway, we're here to talk about today. Your nonprofit organization, 501c3, Marco Polo, has now published yet again the entirety of Hunter Biden's laptop contents. We now know definitively that this is not Russian disinformation. You can imagine how shocked I was to get a threatening letter from Hunter Biden's lawyer, Abbe Lowell, considered by many to be the worst lawyer in America, the cleanup man for the deep left. Even though anything I know about Hunter Biden's laptop, I read in the New York Post. I never had the laptop contents, never discussed it with Mayor Giuliani, who evidently quite legally did. Yes. It is an abusive process, but this is an amazing accomplishment. Folks, you can go to BidenLaptopEmails.com. That's BidenLaptopEmails.com to order a copy of the 644-page dossier on the infamous abandoned device. The great thing about this report is it's comprehensive, it's authoritative, it describes 459 violations of state and federal laws and regulations that were all on his hard drive. This is a massive project. Garrett, tell us how you did this.
Well, it was a long time in the making. It took me about 18 months. I put on 30 pounds. Thank God I've since lost that. But I spent the entirety of 2022 in my home office here writing this book, and I went through every single file, which is about 200 gigabytes. And this relaunch of our email database where everybody listening to this, everybody in America for free, can go and look and read all 128,000 of these. We did this as sort of a public service. There are many groups on the right who have this laptop, but we're really democratizing. I know it's a left-wing word, but we're really, democratizing the data, and that's what made Abbe Lowell lose his mind on us too. I agree with you. He is one of the most atrocious lawyers in America. He lies like you and I breathe. And one of the reasons why they hated us so much is because we spread this data all over the fruited plains. So we not only wrote the book, but, there's a lot of fallout over the communication strategy with the Epstein stuff. And one of the key things I keep hearing is just a lack of disclosure. I think that people could understand if in some cases the statute of limitations is barring a prosecution, but what the public hates is not being told the whole reasoning behind decisions. And so that's the motive for putting this email database together. And by relaunching, I simply mean we wrote it in a newer, better programming language, and it's quicker, and it looks really, really good. And so we have added, and we are going to add more features to this, meaning users will be able to bookmark particular emails, like 10 held by H for the big guy, that infamous email. All of Hunter's Chinese business deals wherein he got at least $7 million. That's a floor, not a ceiling. At least $7 million for no discernible worker experience. All of those emails are on this, and it's the only place in the country where you can go view it. So I'm grateful for you having me on to talk about this, because we are basically, completely shut out of the mainstream on cable TV. I mean, it's very hard for our work to get any attention on the mainstream, but there's this website out there that's completely free, completely secure, and I want everybody not to have trepidation about going to this, because we redacted genitalia and we've redacted social security numbers and credit card numbers. And if even that doesn't convince you, all your listeners should know that Hunter's ridiculous lawsuit against Marco Polo and me personally was dismissed with prejudice, meaning Hunter can never bring these ridiculous claims against us again. So there's literally no legal risk anymore, which is, a good thing to have off my back. But that's where that attack dog, Abby Lowell, came in. He just said things that were untrue, and the press parroted his ridiculous allegations.
So here's an important question for you, Garrett. Who has worse hair, Abby Lowell or Congressman Jamie Raskin?
Jamie Raskin. And can we talk about this for 90
sure.
seconds?
Yes,
Just because Jamie Raskin, it really is a bird in my saddle. He's one of the most despicable members of the lower chamber to ever be in the history of the United States of America. First of all, son of a huge commie. Foreign agent, degenerate novelist, Marcus Ratskin. And what I loathe about Jamie is not just his lying, but when he had cancer, which isn't his fault, I'm not making fun of him for having cancer, but when he did have cancer, it looked as if he took a black spray paint can and literally sprayed it on top of his head, meaning it's one thing to look like that Prison Mike character from The Office with a bandana on your head. I think everybody can forgive that. What they cannot forgive is a raccoon-looking figure on top of your head in which you spray paint black paint over it. But the only person I loathe more than Jamie Raskin and Abby Lowell, who dyes his hair, is Dan Goldman. Dan Goldman is, in my opinion, the most mendacious character, almost worse than Schiff. He's the worst in the House. Schiff, I think, is the worst in the Senate. Clear mortgage fraud candidate. I hope that the District of Maryland, if I were the U.S. Attorney today in the District of Maryland and I saw the FHA complaint and President Trump's True Social, I better be impaneling a grand jury. That guy ripped off the taxpayer for tens of thousands of dollars. He got a better mortgage rate. So, by the way, all these characters that I'm alluding to, Raskin and Schiff, even though they're not directly communicating with Hunter, their names are in the laptop emails. So what the goal is with this email database, which we first put up in May of 22, it's for other reporters, and there have been over 25 articles from the New York Post who they've linked their stories to our database. So they'll talk about an email and then put the hyperlink to the exact email out of the 128,000 in the article, and that really makes my heart sing, because I know this story, this 200 gigabytes is bigger than just what I can go through. So it's really a repository for other researchers and writers to use in their stories. Shifts in the emails, all these jokers are in the emails. It's one of the first peering into the American swamp ever, really, meaning there's been no, very rarely is this much primary source material going to be available to the public without redactions in their communications. Obviously, a guy on our team spent the better part of a month just covering up the genitalia of the 46th U.S. president's family. So then, by the way, I mentioned this on your program before, but one of Abby Lowell's ridiculous causes of action in his lawsuit against me is that I covered up his client's genitalia. They called it data modification because I put black boxes over his client's genitalia. So according to Abby Lowell and Hunter's other attorneys, according to their own logic, they would have preferred their client be naked in our publications. And because we're Christians, we don't distribute pornography. But it is fascinating that Winston Strawn, who's now suing Hunter, allowed their firm's name to be put on a lawsuit accusing me of data modification just because I was a gentleman to Hunter and covered up his own genitalia.
Yeah, it's really quite extraordinary. Folks, once again, you can go to BidenLaptopEmails.com. That's Biden Laptop Emails. To get your own copy and to look at this extraordinary body of work. The annotations are very helpful to help the average American understand who's who and which one of Hunter's co-conspirators was doing what. As I recall, in one of these deals, Hunter got significant equity in a Chinese energy company. What ended up happening to that stock?
Well, it's an interesting case because the U.S. lobbyist was arrested in November of 2017. His name was Patrick Ho, and he was tried and convicted, spent some time in the clink, and during his recorded prison interviews and phone calls, he was trying to get Xi Jinping's attention to help them out. So basically, once this guy named Patrick Ho got arrested, that energy company called CEFC disintegrated, and Xi Jinping arrested the main honcho, Ye Jianming, in China. So both the U.S. guy, well, he's from Hong Kong, but he spent a lot of time in the States, about 2 decades. Both Patrick Ho and the CEFC chairman were both arrested, and Patrick Ho at least is alive. The Chinese fellow, Ye Jianming, has not been heard of since 2018, and he's probably fish food at the bottom of the Yangtze. But the arrest of Patrick Ho blew that operations cover. That energy company was trying to spread the Belt and Road Initiative in the Western world, from Latin America all the way up to the U.S., and the Bidens were going to be the U.S. representatives for this Chi-Com company. They were trying to set up meetings with Andrew Cuomo, all of these folks. We actually have the dope chart that Jimmy Biden sent to Hunter of every single Politico that they were going to try to set up meetings with. And, of course, they got $7 million for no discernible work. They sent a couple of emails. And, again, it's clear money laundering. Hunter's prosecutions, especially the gun one, were stupid. That's why Hunter is so ridiculous to hate me. And his wife spit on my face and called me all these names. They don't realize that I was actually defending Hunter in his gun case because the charge was dumb. I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. I don't think that just because you use drugs, you don't get to defend your family. So Hunter was actually convicted of a stupid charge that may be overturned at SCOTUS someday, but they didn't charge him for the obvious money laundering that he was engaged in. And I'm furious at David Weiss and that whole special counsel operation. And the Congress has been ineffective, to no one's surprise, at getting to the bottom of that.
Listen, I put up with this every day. Oh, Roger Stone and his wife evaded federal taxes. No, false. We reported every penny of income and every penny of our assets, meager as they were. After they target you in a witch hunt and they bankrupt you, they then sue you because you can't pay. I now owe them a massive amount of money because I got interest and penalties, and I will probably die owing them taxes, but I have paid everything to date. All my taxes are up to date. This is like apples and oranges. Hunter Biden failed to report $10 million worth of income. That is classic.
It is astonishing. And November 7th, when November 7th went by, I know the election was on the 5th, but like by the 7th, I was already thinking of you, Roger, saying, hey, whatever entity, whether it's the Southern District of Florida, whatever, they better drop that BS on you, because remember, with Hunter's pardon, that too meant all of the fines and interest and penalties went away. So it makes me scream. It makes me furious when they're trying to fleece folks like you with interest and penalties, and then this decrepit crackhead Hunter Biden not only doesn't get to go to prison, but all of his civil liabilities get wiped out too. It is astonishing. So hopefully, by the end of 29, this gets taken care of for you.
That would be nice. It is a rigged system. When we come back, I want to ask you, the House has just minutes ago passed a historic cryptocurrency legislation, sending it to the president's desk. This is indeed a massive positive for America. I want to talk about that when we get back. They have passed a regulatory framework for stable coins. This is the new economy. Great credit to Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, who's an outside-the-box libertarian thinker, staunch supporter of the president, and I think among his very best cabinet picks. We'll be right back with Garrett Ziegler. He is the founder and chairman of Marco Polo. I think it's marcopolo.org, as I recall. But go to BidenLaptopEmails.com, BidenLaptopEmails.com, and take a look, order your copy of this incredible 644-page dossier and get the truth from Marco Polo. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you're back in the Stone Zone. We're still with Garrett Ziegler. He's the founder and chairman of Marco Polo. That's the nonprofit organization that has taken upon themselves a massive project to expose corruption surrounding Hunter Biden and the Biden crime family. Garrett, let me ask you an important question. Is there, putting aside the Supreme Court's decision about immunity and the president, in a normal circumstance, has enough been uncovered so that Joe Biden, the former president, could have reasonably been prosecuted for these massive $1 million payments that seem to have made their way to him?
Totally. And even if, first of all, the Congress, one of the valuable things the Congress did do was they had the subpoena power. Obviously, we don't. And they uncovered the involvement of Joe Biden's power of attorney, an 84-year-old attorney in Delaware named Mel Monzak. He's been Joe Biden's power of attorney since 1987. And everything that Joe and Jimmy do runs through Mel's firm. And there was a check that came from Jimmy Biden to Joe for $40K, and that money came in part from the Chinese and in part from a now defunct healthcare company called AmeriCorps. The reason why this is important is because those checks occurred at a time when Joe was out of the vice presidency. Obviously, the U.S. or Trump v. U.S. SCOTUS precedent only applies to the president, not the VP. But even if we were to take an expansive view of the ruling and say that it does apply to the VP and thus all of the 951 violations or 219 violations that Joe engaged in when he was the vice president, that CHICOM money came at a time when Joe was out of office. And the violations are very simple. They were acting as unregistered agents for a foreign principal, and that foreign principal was, like you said, CEFC, that Chinese conglomerate that was attempting to create Belt and Road infrastructure projects. And everybody can go look up U.S. v. Patrick Ho that took place right in the middle of the WABC viewership. I mean, it was at Foley Square, that trial, and obviously he was convicted. And those violations were within that period before he became president through the rigged election, and after he was vice president. So, yeah, any fair two-bit FBI special agent would see the paper trail, and they would see that the money ultimately was washed through multiple entities. It wasn't always easy to track. I will admit that. The laptop is sort of like those peepholes in doors. The laptop is like a peephole, meaning we can only see a portion of the interaction. Sometimes Hunter would say, hey, text me on WhatsApp. So we'd have a portion of the conversation on iMessage, but then the WhatsApp message wasn't, or the WhatsApp conversation wasn't captured. But what the feds have is the benefit of collating all of that data. And it's why people are mad about the Epstein communications fallout. It's because the feds are sitting on this trove. They're sitting on the result of the search warrant of the Manhattan townhouse, and they have all this primary source evidence. And, of course, nobody wants to see child sexual abuse material or any of the victims identified by face or whatever. But they are sitting on a trove, and I just hope that they move to unseal. Like you said, I listened to your speech intently from Florida this past weekend. That's such an easy win that the DOJ, and they, thank God, just got rid of Maureen Comey, they could do tomorrow. They could apply to have an unsealing in the SDNY for a deceased individual. I mean, it'd be one thing if Epstein were still alive. This guy's dead.
He has no rights to be violated. I totally agree. And I think that is the easiest way. Again, the president simply needs to direct his attorney general to direct the interim U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York to move in federal court to unseal the grand jury testimony, and this is very important, and also the search warrants issued by the federal prosecutors in that jurisdiction. He was prosecuted for conspiracy to engage in child sex trafficking as well as child sex trafficking. We have to wrap it up there. Again, I want to thank my guest, Garrett Ziegler. Urge you to go to BidenLaptopEmails.com. Garrett, thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?